Hi guys, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. Tracy here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how I made this scarf for my partner Gary. It is kind of a knit looking ribbed scarf and it's nice and easy, and I'm going to show you how I did that. But this yarn is very well confusing to work with if you're trying to see stitches, so I'm going to be making it with a different yarn, but this one is made with a DK, although you can use any yarn that you want as long as you use the corresponding crochet hook. And all I did to border it was make a cuff, and the cuff went all the way around as if you were kind of putting a border on a blanket. I just did both ends at the same time. And so I'm gonna just clear this away then and get ready to start. So in the meantime, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. I'll be back with you in a sec. Okay, so hopefully this yarn is going to be much easier to see the stitches. This is Stylecraft Chromatic double knitting yarn. And this is one that I sell in my shop, hobbyrocks.co.uk, and I'm doing swatch videos with this one at the moment, so it'll serve a double purpose. Now this one's called Frosted Flora. It's a really nice yarn. It does have a wool content though, and it is marbled, where two colours are kind of in the same piece of yarn. So I'm hoping it's not going to be too confusing to work with. But most of the ones, unless I'm doing it with plain yarn, is going to be the same. So I'm going to be using my wool Genie. These are amazing, and I do stock these as well as extra spindles and bases, so that you can use more than one kind of colour at the same time. Would have been handy to find the end first. There it is, isn't it? It's in there somewhere. Okay, it's now tangled. It's not according to plan. Right, there we are. Okay, so to start off, we just make a slip knot, and you can do that however you normally would do it. And this has no real multiple. I'm using a 4.5mm crochet hook. You could use a 4 with this, but it's quite a tight stitch. Now, what I will say, although there's no multiple, it's a multiple of just one, you need to make a longer chain than you really need, because if you put the chain around your neck and think that's long enough for a scarf, these kind of stitches do squash up a little bit, and so there's a piece of fluff there that's irritating me. So they do tend to kind of pull up a little bit, so it will shorten. So I'm going to do a little swatch. We'll make a bit bigger. As I said, it will kind of collapse down. I think that's going to be, I'll do a few more. Okay, so the first row is nice and simple. We're just going to do one UK double or US single crochet in every stitch. So we're going to ignore the first one and just pop one in there. Now this tutorial does assume that you know the stitches. So I do have tutorials for all the stitches and beginners, absolute beginners course. So if you want to brush up on them, you can. But I'm just going to put one. You can go in the back bump if you'd like, or you can just go in the chain as it presents. No problem at all either way. So because it's going to be boring just watching me go all the way to the end with these UK doubles or US singles, I shall pause it and catch up with you once I've finished this row. Okay, so I'm all the way to the end. Now, bearing in mind, you know, if you're going to make this along with me, you'll have to pause me for quite some time before you get to the end. But now I've done my very last stitch, I'm going to turn my work, and I don't do turning chains. The only way I do them is sometimes on a project like this, I might do a turning chain and pull it so that it's not there, but it just stops the it just ends that row and stops the yarn disappearing when I want to use it. So now I'm going to go into this first stitch, and I'm going to go in the back loops only. So I'm sure you know, but for those of you who are quite new to crochet, This is your front loop. If you're looking down at your stitches at the V's, you're just going to go in these back loops. So I've done my cinched down chain. I don't want to see that chain. I don't want it confusing with a stitch. And I'm just going to insert my hook into that back loop, pull up a loop and yarn over, pull up a loop, and I'm going to pull it through both. So I'm going to slip stitch in the back loop only all the way to the end. Now, as I say, this will kind of shorten your chain quite a bit, because slip stitching does tend to do that. But I'm just going to go all the way to the end, going in the back loop only, pulling my loop through that back loop and the loop that's on my hook. My Genie doesn't want to move then. Sometimes when the yarn balls are completely full up, it sits on itself and just need to give it a gentle tug. Okay, so you can easily see the one that you've worked in. If you get confused at any time or interrupted, even with these yarns that are two colours, like bi-colour yarn, leaning on it doesn't help. So I'm just going to go in the back loop and slip stitch through both loops on my hook. Simple as that. Okay, and all that's doing is making it look a little weird, but you know, it will work out, I promise. But the first row of this is usually the hardest, because it can be a bit confusing to see. So just carry on all the way to the end. I'm going to pause it because, again, it will be just boring watching me do this all the way to the end. Don't forget, once you've finished your big, long row, you can come back to me. Okay, so I've gone all the way to the end. And now this is the V that you're looking at. It kind of has made a bump, so it's slightly off center, but you can see there, these are your V's that you're looking at now. This one, this one, this one. And if you want, you can hold your finger so that you completely cut off anything else. So in the back loop, I'm not going to do a chain this time. You can if you want. But in the back loop, I'm just going to pull up a loop. So I have two on my hook, yarn over and through two of them. So we're now going to do a UK double crochet or a US single crochet in the back loops of our slip stitches that we've just made. Okay, all the way along. And the only thing that's difficult is finding your V, because you've got quite a lot of stuff going on in a very short space of time. But, excuse me, you can see them along there. If you just tilt it a little bit towards you, you can see them. So just go all the way along, doing a UK double or a US single in the back loops of every single stitch along. And because that will be boring, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to pause it and come back to you. Okay, made it all the way to the end. And as you can see, we're now starting to make what looks like quite a nice rib. Incidentally, this works really well on anything you have to rib, say a brim of a hat, or if you want to do the whole hat like that. So now we're going to turn. And I'm going to do my one chain and I'm going to pull it very tight. I don't want to see that, because we're going to do another row in the back loops of slip stitching. So that's pulling the yarn through that loop and the one that's on the hook. And we're going to do that all the way to the end. And you can see your V's. If you tilt it slightly towards you, you can still make out where your V's are. It becomes easier now. Sometimes, you know, we pick a yarn that is very variegated, and that one I made the scarf with for my partner, that was extremely difficult to see. The fact that it was so dark as well, and when you want to crochet in the evening, that was a challenge in itself. But there were so many different yarn colours in this yarn. There's greens, I don't know if you can see them, there's greens all the way through there, grey, black, and all different colours sort of throughout this yarn. So incidentally, just want to show you then what the back looks like. Again, it's not ugly or anything, it just looks like a rib, but I feel there is a front and a back. Anyway, we'll just carry on all the way to the end, doing our slip stitches in those back loops only. I'll pause this then, and as you can probably guess, I'll come back to you once we've done our end of the row. Okay, made it all the way to the end. It wasn't very far, obviously. And I'm going to turn my work, and we're going to make another row which will look like this. It was harder to see on that other yarn, but it's much easier to see on this yarn. So this would make an absolutely lovely cowl as well. I might decide with this yarn to make one once I finish this. Okay, so the next row then, we're going to go in the back loops only. I'm not going to chain, and I'm going to pop my hook in and bring up my loop and do my first UK double US single in back loops only again, all the way to the end. Sometimes it's hard with these yarns that are a bit marbled, where you have two strands twisted together. Sometimes it's, you know, hard. Sometimes you separate them accidentally as you're popping your hook in. But now we're making our second one, and it, see what I mean? It does pull. That I have gone in every single stitch. It's not that I've missed any, but it will pull just a little bit. That's why you need to make a longer starting chain than you think you do, because it will bunch up as a stitch quite considerably. Okay, so once again, as you probably can tell, I will pause this, but rather than come back to you at the end of the row, I'm going to come back to you once I've done quite a few rows. Well, I've gone in the wrong bit there, I think. Or is it just fatter there? Maybe it's just fatter because it's a bit of a roving yarn. So yeah, I'll come back to you once I've done a few rows. So what you want to do, I'm going into, that's what the problem is. What you want to do is make sure that you do, I'm going to just speak because it's harder to concentrate. So that's how it's going to look. You've got these alternate rows with this really nice rib coming in like that. And if you turn it lengthways, you can really see the rib. So I'm going to just do a few rows now. So you want to alternate them. That's what I was trying to say. But while I was fiddling to get it in the hole, I couldn't quite get my words out. So what you want to do is one row of UK double or US single crochet in the back loop, and then the next row you want to do the slip stitch. Now, if you feel that you need to do that cinch down chain both rows, you can, but I prefer just to do it on the slip stitch row because it kind of ends off, stops the yarn from going back on itself. But when you get to doing the UK double or US single crochet, it's a more substantial stitch and you can see where you've got to put your hook. Okay, so I'm going to pause it then, and I'll come back to you once I've done a fair size swatch, and I'll show you what I did with the border on this particular scarf. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I did this border. Now this does look like I've ribbed it, so I'm hoping it'll come out the same, because I just can't remember if I did back posts or full UK double US singles. I think I did full. And with this border, I've got like a cuff, and so it will pull like a rib, but then the whole scarf does, so it should be fine. So you want to end on the normal kind of back loop UK double US single row, not on the slip stitch row. So I've done that. If you haven't, then just pause the video and make your one row to get to the end on that row. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work along this edge. And when you work in a round, or if you're bordering a blanket, there is a tendency to do 3 stitches in the corner to turn the corner. Not going to do that. That's I do that if I'm maybe doing the same stitch all the way around, but for this I'm not going to do that, because all I need to do is get up to the correct height for my next row of stitches. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go into the stitch I've just created and yarn over and pull up and make my first stitch along this edge. So I'm going to make what I call the stack stitch. Now in the US it's a stack single, in the UK it's a stack double, so just for this purposes of my tutorials I call this just the stack. So I've made one. Now here's my stitch, and the anatomy of the stitch is there are two kind of vertical lines. That one sits more diagonal. I'm going to go into that one loop only, yarn over and pull through that, so I have two on my hook, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through both of those. So now I'm up to the correct height for my stitches. Okay, so how I'm going to do this is I'm going to make a stitch in between every one of these ribs. Okay, so for the first one we have this stitch here, and I'm going to just go in and pull up a loop. So I've yarned over, pulled up a loop, and gone in, pulled up a loop, and have three on my hook. And I'm going to yarn over and pull through all three. I'm doing that because I don't want a big tall stitch along this edge at this moment in time. So I'm going to go in between every one of these ribs. That's because I don't want to make a stitch in every single row that I've done. I want to only make a stitch where I've created my UK doubles and US singles. The rest of the stitches were slip stitches. They're not really that wide, so we don't want to go creating a stitch there. Now there is just this end one where we have this bit on its own here, so I'm going to go in there as well. Okay, so now I have a row of stitches all along that edge, and what I'm going to do now is going to go back along the original foundation chain. So I'm going to put my first stitch into the stitch I've just created. Okay, I'm going to pull up my loop, yarn over and pull through both. So now I'm facing the right way. Okay, so I've gone into that stitch that I created. Now I'm going to go into the first stitch along my foundation chain and into every single one all the way along until I get back. I'm working over this tail as well, because the beauty of a scarf like this is, unless you've made had to join another ball, you don't have ends to sew in, and so I'm going to just work over. This is my start, so that's my tail. Okay, I'm going to go all the way along to the end, just picking up a stitch in every single chain space along. And normally I would pause it, but I'm more or less there, so might as well just stick with it. So I think this is the end now, where you get that slight slope in, which if you wanted to, sorry for sniffing, but I've got a bit of an allergy today. I had the sneezing fit earlier. Right, so I'm in my last stitch. So if we hold that up, you can see it's not too bad, but it is making a slight slant. Now with a big long scarf, don't really notice it. But if you were very bothered about it, then you could at this end make half trebles or half doubles US, and then along here you could do UK trebles or double crochets US, just to make that straight. I'm not bothered, so I'm not going to bother. Now I'm going to go into the stitch that I've just created. I think I might have made it a little tighter than I wanted. Okay, and I'm going to pull up my loop. I'm going to yarn over and pull through both. And then in this slanted one here, just the one loop, I'm going to create my second part of the stack. Now again, I'm going to go in between every single ridge and do a half treble crochet. Half double in the US, but half treble in the UK. It is annoying, isn't it, that we have different names for stitches. I don't know why that happened. Considering we spoke the same language in the beginning, it should be the same. But vive la différence, as they say in France. So here's where, if you wanted to, that really does notice that that's a taller stitch, but it will even out. Here's if you wanted to, you could make these trebles just to even up your size. Not really going to notice at the end of the day. But as I say, with a really long scarf, a little swatch, you're going to notice it. But with a scarf, you're not. So I'm not going to bother anyway. I'll just keep going. Because I'm a rebel. Okay, so I'm going to go in there. But that would create a bit of a slant. So I'm going to go into my last actual stitch. Right, so I've made it across there. So we have all the way across this side, all the way across that side. Now, once again, I'm going to go in the stitch that I've just created. And going to go in every single one of these all the way along. Now, this time round, however, I've got to go into my first stitch as well. From the previous round, I'm going to just go in the stitch, go into both parts, not just back post. I'm going to see how that looks because I want to see if that is how I did my border. I don't remember. I think it is, you know. I was going to say I don't remember just back posting. But it looks more ribbed on the scarf. So I feel that I've got standing on my yarn. That's what it is. I pulled out rather a lot. I thought there was a bit of a resistance there. But yeah, if you turn that over, already you can see that's starting to look like the border I have. So I'm fairly confident that this is what I did. Oops. Nearly there, guys. Of course, you know, it would have been good if I'd have written it down. But when I made the scarf, I was just kind of making it. I didn't really think about doing a tutorial for it or anything like that. That's my last stitch. Okay, so now we've been into these stitches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a UK stack. Oh, it does help to pull the yarn through. Go into my first stitch that I've made, and this time I'm only going to I'm going to carry on and do my full stack. No, I'm not, sorry, I'm confusing myself. Just going to do this one. So you have a choice here as to whether to continue with the half trebles or whether you make these a full treble. So it's either half treble or a full treble, which in the US is a half double or a double. Now I'm going to do it as a full on front post double crochet. So as I need to go round the back of this as well. So it's a bit tricky because these are kind of small stitches when I began. So all I do, I'm going to do the first one and it'll be obvious on the second one. So I'm going to go in between the stitch, around the back and out the other side. I'm going to pull up my loop and I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to go in between the stitch I've just done and around through the stitch, so I'm coming out the other side, not going in the top, I'm going in the actual through the body of it. So I'm going to go in here and out the other side, yarn over and pull it through, yarn over and pull through 2 through 2. So these are a bit tall, but they will even out, don't you worry. When we're going round, this does tend to stop it from looking like a traditional UK treble or US double. We're only really getting our foundation row in place, to be honest with you, because on the next row it will be slightly different, but these are just getting the actual rows kind of sorted out. So I want to go around this one again. It's a bit small, so I'm just going to have to get it in there. Okay, and I'm just going to do a UK half treble into that very first or end stitch there. So we've gone all the way along and we've got our row of stitches there. Now, if you wanted to, I'm going to show you at the other end a different way, so you'll have a choice. I know it's going to be confusing, but some yarns don't allow you to do a front post stitch rib. They will curl. This one, oh, sorry, knocking you around. This one that I was making doesn't curl, so I could do that. But I intended to do front post, back post on my next round, but I'm going to do it straight away on this end so you can see the difference. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go, I don't think I went in the first stitch, did I? I created. That was a mistake. Okay, so go in my first stitch that I created. Now I'm on this edge and I'm going to go in every single stitch all the way along with a UK double or US single. Okay, so this time I will pause it because you must now be surely sick of the sound of my voice. I'll catch up with you when I get to the end. Okay, here I am. I've reached the end. So now I'm going to show you the other way of doing this so that you might, I think that's what I did on here as well. So it's been a while since I've made it, but I'm sure on this I've front post and back post. So this is how I'm going to show you this end. I was intending to do it on my second row along here anyway, now that I'm using the UK treble, US double. So I'm going to go in my first stitch and I'm going to do a UK single double crochet, a US single crochet. Okay, so in the first one, I'm going to do my front post as I did before. I need to pull it right up. Okay, and I'm going to go through 2 and through 2. Now on the next one, I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to come round the back and I'm going to go round the stitch that way. So I've got my whole crochet hook between that stitch. I'm going to yarn over and pull it through, pull it up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Front post, the same as before. Back post, yarn over. I always get them mixed up, front post and back. Go back and round the stitch, yarn over and pull it through. Yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. So it's just alternating front posts with back posts. If I go ahead of you, then just pause the video and catch up with me. It makes a much wider ribbon, not as attractive as just doing the front post all the time. But what I'll do is I'm going to show you both. So I won't do the other end this way. I'll do the other end the other way. Okay, in the last stitch, I'm just going to do a half treble. Okay, so we're making a start. It doesn't look ribby at the moment, but we've made a start on that. Okay, so I'm going to just go into the stitch that I've just made and make my first stitch along this edge. I'm going to go in each one all the way along, just as before. Okay, so I will pause the video because it will be boring to watch me go in each and every one of these all the way along, and I'll come back to you once I have got to the other end. Okay, so here I am. Now this is the one where I did my just front post all the way along, and as I said, some yarns will not allow you to do that without curling. So I'm going to do go into the stitch I've just created the other way, and now I'm going to just find my first stitch from the previous round, which is there, and I need to go around that and make, doesn't help if you don't go in all of them. And now I'm going to go in. It's ever so easy when you're doing just front posts because it presents itself nice and up to just slant your hook and push it in. You don't have to really go all the way around. It just slides under. It makes a lovely rib, a much nicer to look at rib. But, as I say, sometimes it will just curl and you can't really uncurl it once it's done that. Looks like it's working out quite nicely though with this yarn. It really just depends. You have to just see whether that yarn will allow it. Some doesn't, unfortunately. Depends how springy, I guess, the yarn is. Okay, so I'm just going to go into my last stitch. I'm going to just do, a half treble, half double. And there we go. See, it looks kind of, I like the way this rib looks. I tried it with a half treble. It curled mercilessly. Really did. Okay, so now I'm going to go along this edge. I'm going to go in the stitch I just created, if I can get in it. And not going to want to let me. No, it's not really letting me, is it? Why are you not letting me? I don't have a very pointy hook, but I will get you in. There we are. So now I'm going to go in every single one all the way along this edge, just as I have been doing. So you guessed, I'll pause it and come back to you once I get to the other end. But basically what I'm doing is I'm adding one little rib every time I start. I didn't do it there, did I? Checking that out. I've got a small one there and I haven't created it. So that possibly is why it doesn't seem right to me. So there we go. I've got my previous and I need to create one. There we are. It's a bit tight. And now we need to go into that first, or rather last stitch. We need to pull it over to find it. I feel like my hook's not very pointy at all. I've got a blunt one. There we go. I'm going to do a UK half treble, US half double. There we are. I've got my little stitch in now. But it's not curling, is it? So, you know, I prefer it when it's, this stitch is nice. I like it a lot. So, oh, I don't know what happened there, it split. But sometimes it does pretty mercilessly curl up on you. There we are. Got you in. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to go all the way along this edge and I will pause it for you and catch up with you at the other end. There we go. Okay, so here I am. I'm going to go in my very first stitch there and hang on, pull some yarn out. Okay, that's enough, I think. So this is the front post, back post round, and I think, to be honest with you, that might be a tall enough stack because it's going, oh, we'll see. Maybe not. We would make a full one. It is a treble, isn't it, after all? So now I need to make a new little back post stitch because we have that first one is a front post. Okay, so here we are. This is our front post stitch, and what we do is we front post in the front posts and we back post around the back posts. We front post the front posts and we back post the back posts. And we're going to do that all the way to the end. And just as we had to create one at the start, we'll have to create one at the end. And you can see which your last was. They do look completely different, so you can tell which your first, if it was a back or a front. So you'll know which one you have to create. So as you can see, the other end is a lot neater in terms of the ribbon, a lot neater. Okay, so I kind of need to try and back post around this little stitch here, and then in that stitch that start, or the end of the round, there we are. So it's becoming ribby, that's a word, but you always, it will get tighter, and so you don't see these cross bits across, but it will always be more open than this end. Obviously the other end of this doesn't look, no, the side of this one doesn't look nice, but on what, whereas this one, it's the same kind of both sides, but this one looks really great on one side, not so great on the other side. So and it does curl somewhat when you really don't want it to. It's not curling at the moment, but the trick is to be looser, I think. So we're going in the stitch we created, making our first one. Not to forget to go in the actual first stitch of the last round, and then all the way along as before, all the way to the end. Again, I'll pause it then and catch up with you at the other end. Here I am. So looking at my previous work then, my other scarf, as you can see, it's the same on both sides. So it was a front post, back post. So although this does look really nice, and it's great for things like fingerless gloves, not necessarily when you want to see both sides, or it doesn't matter which way round you have your project. So I'm going to carry on as I did start with this one, this end, just to show you the differences. So we need to create one again. So we're going to go in this little guy at the beginning. And then we need to go in each one all the way along. That was the first one of the previous round. And now, so it does tend to throw up a few shorter ones at the beginning and end of the row, but I don't mind it. I think it looks kind of cute. Anyway, so this is just doing easily popping through and doing. front posts. So with the other way, front post and back post, you have a choice of doing them with the treble stitch, which is a double in the US, or the half treble, half double. It's completely up to you. I prefer doing the UK treble or US double purely for the fact that if you didn't, then this part gets a lot wider. Because to get the rib as long as this, you need a fair few rows, and this border here would just get a lot wider. So I prefer doing the longer stitch, and that way it doesn't. Okay, so this end doesn't really matter so much, but I'm going to continue doing it as if it did. I'm going to go and do this stitch and then the last one. Make my stitch along the edge, start my round. I've got a feeling this will be the last one. Okay, so you know what I'm going to say. I'll pause it then, catch up with you when I get all the way to the other end. Okay, so here we are. This is going to be my last one, as I said. And so what I need to do is to go into the stitch that I've just created and do my stack to get up to the right height. And so we have a back post. We need to create a front post here around this little stitch. And then the previous one that we created was the back post. And we just alternate as before with front and back posts all the way to the end. And then I will stop and you can have a look at it. And it's not far to go. Just a few stitches. You can see it ribbing. The only criticism I have of this is that it does pull quite far apart. You get after a few rows it does start to close a little, but it's not as neat as the other way. But the other way looks awful on the back, so you really can't always use that. So there's my last from the previous round. And I don't really have one to make. I don't think I did that too cleanly. So just to end off, we'll have a little looky. So, yeah, you can see it's ribbing. But it does look more waffle, doesn't it, than a rib. But it is a rib. It just is quite pulled out on this yarn. But this is the side that is our front row, if you like. The right side, but if you turn it around, then it does tend to make this look more ribbed, I think. So if it were this one, not this one obviously, then this could then be your right side, or this, depending on which one you prefer. Obviously the rib looks better on this side. But that is how I made the scarf, and that's how I made the rib. With this yarn, you can see it did pull nice and tight. I've got a feeling the reason for that is because this is a bit thicker, this yarn, and I probably used the same size crochet hook. I would have used a 4.5 on this as well to get a nice tight kind of ribbed effect for this, because I wanted it to look knitted. I did try knitting with this yarn, but it was awful to knit with. So I decided I was going to crochet the scarf, and I wanted it to look knitted. But I prefer the rib of this one to how it's turned out on this yarn. I think you might need a smaller crochet hook than a 4.5 for this yarn. Anyway, that's how I did the scarf. I hope you like that. I hope you like this rib here. I think it's a lovely kind of alternative to the front post, back post stitches for ribbing. I really, really like it. I mean, obviously you could just carry on and have that as your border. You could just do that. But it is pretty. I like that. It's great for brims of hats as well. It's really, really nice in place of maybe doing the front post, back post, alternate kind. It's really chunky when you do a rib with that. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. As I said before, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Bye bye for now.